I have to start out with one of the strangest pieces of trivia that I've come across in documenting Japanese video games. Officially, per Capcom, the title of this game is Sidearm. Yes, the logo spells it Sidearms, but Capcom explicitly says that is incorrect. The Hue card is actually the first time that they've spelled the game's title phonetically, so before this, even Japanese players were calling it Sidearms. If you wanted to get really fancy, you can call the game Hyperdyne Sidearm, but we're getting weird enough with the title already. Sidearm was originally an arcade game, Capcom's big shoot-'em-up for 1986. One of its big features was a co-op mode, where if you collected the correct icon, then the two players would combine ships, one controlling the flying, the other controlling the weapons. If the ship design looks familiar to you, well, that's just because they copied the Zeta Gundam. Sidearms makes its influences really obvious, which we'll see again in a little bit. Like all other Capcom games we're going to see on the PC Engine, Capcom handed Sidearm off to another company, NEC in this case. And NEC managed to capture the essence of the arcade game with very few compromises. Of course, one of those compromises was dropping the two-player mode. The plot of the game is that the aliens who wiped out the dinosaurs have come back and decided to do it again to humans. But unlike the dinosaurs, humans have mech suits, and so a hero has been sent in to defeat all of the alien forces. The key thing about Sidearms is that you can fire in two directions. Button 1 fires to the right, Button 2 fires to the left. And naturally, that means this is a game that will throw things at you from all sides. When you shoot down some enemies, they'll leave behind a power-up. And these power-ups rotate through what they are when you shoot them. Or at least some of them do. Some of them are permanent, just staying with one item. But about 90% of them will rotate through a pattern. There are 4 weapon power-ups you can collect, plus the red POW and the blue reverse POW. The POWs are actually speed up and speed down. The blue POW is just about the last thing to come up in the rotation, and cycling to the final power-up past it takes a ton of shots. Unless you have no power-ups at all, collecting a weapon power-up doesn't switch you to that weapon. Instead, you have a weapon select bar, and collecting a power-up will increase the level of that weapon. You control the bar by pressing Start, which pauses the game, and then you can select between the 4 weapon systems. You can never choose to completely disable these, though. All weapons have 3 levels of power, but they start out with nothing, so until you collect that weapon at least once, you can't switch to it. The red circles are bits. They'll fire a laser shot straight ahead, same thing as your default gun. As the level increases, more bits will circle around you. You also gain more shots with your own gun when you use this weapon. The shotgun is probably the best weapon in the game, since even though it has a very slow rate of fire, it covers a good portion of the screen and destroys any bullets that it hits. Sidearm is a game that expects you to destroy a lot of incoming shots, and the shotgun is the most effective way to do it. The Mega Bazooka Laser is your focused fire weapon. One big shot. It does tons of damage and penetrates enemies. That makes it perfect to use against bosses, but not very effective when you're dealing with a swarm. Finally, there's the 3-way shot, which differs from the shotgun in 2 important respects. First, the rate of fire is a lot higher. And second, it doesn't shoot down bullets. So while I think this isn't the worst option, it's probably not going to be my first choice. Now that's the basic 4, but there's one more weapon system that's kind of special. If you shoot the blue POW long enough, it'll turn into a Yashichi, the pinwheel symbol that turns up in a lot of Capcom games. That will grant you the auto weapon, which is just rapid fire. Of course, if you're already using a rapid fire controller, then it isn't that much more help, but it does seem to increase the cap on the number of bullets you can fire. Now if you collect another Yashichi, nothing happens. But smash that blue POW again, and it becomes a star. And that gives you an auto-fire weapon that also shoots up and down at the same time. Of course, if you want to shoot up and down, there's an easier option than going through all of that hassle. Collecting the Alpha power-up, which are hidden in locations rather than collected from shooting down enemies, and you'll merge with another ship. In this merge mode, you gain an 8-way attack, firing in all directions. It's got a low rate of fire, but it'll still take out a lot of enemies. If you get hit in this power-up state, then you don't get destroyed, you just go back to normal. Sidearm is one of those shoot-em-ups where getting hit without that kind of shield will destroy you instantly, and you'll lose all of the power-ups on the weapon that you have. But it will also automatically switch your next life over to another weapon. On the other hand, you're only invulnerable for about 1 second after you revive, so if you aren't prepared and don't have the correct weapon ready, then it's very likely that you'll just get destroyed over and over again. This is a game where it can be very difficult to recover after you've been destroyed. You get 3 credits when you start up Sidearm, which means you have 2 continues. And of course, when you continue, you don't have any power-ups at all, so that makes it even more likely that you'll be quickly wiped out. Sidearm has 10 stages, but they're not really divided up into stages. The game moves smoothly between areas after you defeat a boss. There are some odd quirks to Sidearm, like how certain enemies will take many hits to defeat, but after you hit them once, they become invulnerable for several seconds. And enemies can pass through terrain even though you can't, which just tends to give you even less room to maneuver. At least you can't die by colliding with terrain unless you're trapped between it and the screen scrolling. The thing that Japanese players seem to remember about Sidearm is its brutal difficulty. And I can definitely attest to that. I was struggling to get past the 3rd boss. But it is accurate to the arcade in that way. Of course, if Sidearm was too hard for you, well then, you can play Sidearm Special. Not even 6 months after the release of the HuCard version, NEC released Sidearm Special on CD-ROM. And the difference between these 2 versions is enormous. For the main menu, you get your choice of 2 modes, Standard and Before Christ. You know, the typical options that you'll find in any video game. Starting off with Standard, while it's similar to the HuCard version, now there's an Easy mode available right from the title screen. This was actually accessible in the HuCard version if you used a cheat code, since what Easy mode does is slow the game down by half. It's still brutally difficult, but you at least have a chance to learn the game. The music in Sidearm Special is a set of new arrangements all done by Capcom themselves, or more specifically, Alf Lyla, Capcom's in-house band comprised mostly of the women on their sound team. The Standard mode also has a few graphical tweaks, particularly to the bosses, so it didn't change how any of them played. Of course, what you really want to know about is the other mode, Before Christ. So apparently, the reason that this mode is called Before Christ is that it's not based on Sidearm the arcade game. It's based on the prototype that would become heavily revised. Although the stage graphics and some of the layouts are the same, sometimes, the weapons, the power-ups, and the bosses are all radically different. And in many cases, it's a lot closer to the games that Capcom was drawing inspiration from. Take, for example, your regular gun. If you don't mash the fire button, you can charge it up instead, and when you release it, it fires the Mega Bazooka laser. This charge for a large beam attack is identical to Irem's R-Type. And that's not the end of the R-Type connection. Just look at the beams this boss fires. Some enemies will drop weapons for you, but you don't shoot these to rotate what they do. Instead, they'll rotate on their own. There's an upgrade to the default forward shot, adding more bullets as you level it up. A flamethrower boomerang thing, which moves and fires faster as you level it up. And then the 3-way shot, which seems to be the only weapon that stuck. If you collect a Yashichi, then you get a bit. But these don't orbit around you, they fly directly above and below you. And rather than just fire a normal shot, they fire one of the 3 weapons, just not the one that you're currently using. If you have the forward gun, then the bits shoot an angled bullet like the 3-way weapon. If your active weapon is the 3-way, then they fire the boomerang shot. If you have that flame boomerang, then the bits just shoot forward. When you have the bits and you get hit, then the bits shrink, and you can take 3 shots like that before the bits are destroyed, and the next hit destroys you. Unlike the final version of Sidearm, Before Christ mode is broken up into distinct stages, and after you defeat a boss, you get returned to no power-ups. You always start from square one. On top of that, if you get destroyed while flying in the level, you go back to the start of the level. At least if you get killed at the boss, then you revive at the boss, though you are starting that fight over from the beginning. Between Sidearm and Sidearm Special is the one that people like on the PC Engine. And really, who can blame them? You get 2 games in one, and even if you just wanted to play regular Sidearm, this is clearly the better version. My own feelings here are that Sidearm is brutally difficult, but still worth playing. And Sidearm Special is a unique title in 1989. Even these days, this kind of reimagining of earlier versions is rare, but it was effectively unheard of at that point. That makes it a package definitely worth checking out.